Some love stories weren't meant to happen, not because the feelings aren't real, but because the world says they shouldn't be. She was the employer, elegant, distant, and tired of being alone. She was the maid, young, guarded, and carrying more heart than anyone ever noticed. They came from different worlds, but they found each other in quiet moments, over tea, over rain, over silences that felt safer than words. They didn't mean to fall in love, but they did, and it changed everything. Because sometimes the love that shouldn't exist is the one that saves you. The storm was louder than usual that night. Its growl pressing against the windows of Ainsley Evers' townhouse like some wounded beast. The rain fell in sheets, slicing the sky as thunder echoed across the hills of Greybrook, the small coastal town where Ainsley had relocated after the exhaustion of corporate life in the city began to chip at her soul. The townhouse sat at the end of a quiet lane, alone but dignified, much like its owner. At 34, Ainsley wore solitude like silk. It clung to her in the gentlest of ways, never entirely comfortable, but familiar. Her days were filled with editing book manuscripts, remotely sipping strong tea, and tending to her small herb garden. She had always been proud of her independence. She didn't need anyone. But that night, she opened her front door to a girl who would change everything. Ainsley had placed an ad weeks ago for help, nothing elaborate. Just someone to clean once a week, maybe cook if they felt like it. Since moving to Greybrook, she'd come to realize her life needed more warmth than just a radiator and a flickering fireplace. But clients came and went. No one stayed. No one felt right. Until her. Her name was Maria. She introduced herself with trembling fingers and hair plastered to her cheeks, her coat soaked through and clinging to her slim frame. And when she smiled, wary, polite, it tugged at something deep inside of Ainsley, something she hadn't felt in years. I'm here about the posting. I know I'm early, Maria said, her voice barely audible over the rain. Ainsley blinked, caught off guard. You're soaked. Come in before you drown. Maria stepped inside, shivering slightly, up close. She was younger than Ainsley expected, maybe 23 or 24. She had a kindness behind her eyes, shy and unsure, the kind that gets overlooked by most. But not by Ainsley. Ainsley noticed details. It was her job, after all. She noticed the way Maria tucked her stray curls behind her ears when nervous, the calluses on her hands, the faint chapped skin on her lips. A girl who worked hard, a girl who had endured things. You shouldn't be out in weather like this, Ainsley said as she handed her a towel. Did you walk all the way here? I live a few blocks out, Maria replied, drying her face. Didn't expect the rain to turn like this. Ainsley made tea. She wasn't planning on doing an interview that night, but the air shifted between them in a strange, unspoken way, magnetic and quiet. Maria opened up slowly, like petals coaxed by a hesitant spring. She had recently moved to Greybrook too. Her accent held traces of Spanish, her words pacing carefully, as if she were constantly measuring what to reveal. When Maria laughed softly, almost surprised, it made Ainsley feel something delightful and terrifying, like she wanted to hear it again. They talked longer than they should have. By the time Maria left, wearing Ainsley's spare coat and holding an umbrella she insisted on returning, the storm had softened into a drizzle. Ainsley stood at the door for a moment after she left, her fingers cold around the mug she didn't realize she was still holding. The echo of Maria's smile lingered like the scent of rain, unshakable. Maria started work the next day. She arrived early, always early, and wore that same uncertain half smile like a shield. At first, she kept to her duties, quietly washing dishes by hand, although there was a dishwasher, humming barely audible songs in Spanish, folding throw blankets like they were silk. Ainsley found herself avoiding the kitchen just to watch her. From the hallway, she told herself it was curiosity, interest, not attraction. But she was lying. It began in small moments. Their fingers grazing over a teacup passed too slowly. Laughter slipping more freely. Stories exchanged like confessions. Maria loved books, it turned out. Had even started university once, but had to quit when situations at home changed. Life got complicated, she said once, wiping down the windows, her voice wistful. Ainsley wanted to ask more, wanted to dig under the gentle surface of this girl-woman who had taken over her quiet, ordered home like sunlight warming a forgotten room. But she stopped herself each time. She was her employer. They weren't friends. They certainly weren't supposed to be whatever it was they were becoming. One night, about 3 weeks in, something shifted for good. Maria stayed late to help with dinner. It had become a quiet ritual by then, and Ainsley poured them each a glass of wine, thinking nothing of it. They talked as the pasta bubbled, and the house filled with the scent of garlic and rosemary. I don't think I ever told you how I ended up in Graybrook, Ainsley said, swirling the dark red liquid in an elegant curve. Maria peeked up from slicing bread. No, you haven't. I was in publishing in London for years. Worked myself numb, Ainsley said. I was engaged once, to a man. We lasted 3 years. He didn't know me. Not really. Maria tilted her head gently. Did he hurt you? No, Ainsley said, her throat dry. He didn't love me. I couldn't pretend it was enough. Maria nodded slowly, and the silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was charged, compassionate. Still, you're brave, Maria whispered. No, Ainsley replied. I'm just tired of lying about who I am. And then there it was again, that pull, that horrible, beautiful gravity between them. Maria looked at her in that moment like she saw all the things Ainsley tried to hide: her loneliness, her doubt, her aching capacity to feel, and didn't look away. Ainsley didn't know what she meant to say. She only knew that if Maria moved even an inch closer, she'd do something foolish, irrevocable. I should go, Maria whispered, licking her lips nervously, her hands tightening around her bag. It's late. But at the door, before she left, Maria turned. Her breath caught as she looked up into Ainsley's eyes. There was a long pause, lifetime sealed in one final heartbeat dot, and then Maria said, almost inaudibly, I never feel afraid when I'm here. Ainsley didn't sleep that night, because she couldn't stop replaying those words, and the way they made her feel like some locked, cold part of her had suddenly remembered how to burn. Ainsley was folding laundry when she realized something strange had changed. She held one of her own sweaters in her hands, blue cashmere, still warm from the dryer, and caught the faint scent of Maria on it. Lavender and something wilder, like clove or honeysuckle. It wasn't Maria's, not technically, but she'd worn it once when a glass of water spilled and soaked her. Ainsley had handed it to her from her drawer without thinking. It was a casual kindness, but holding it now felt intimate, worrisome, dangerous. She clutched the sweater to her chest and exhaled. This couldn't happen. Whatever this was, the feelings building in her, this slow unraveling, weren't appropriate. Not just because Maria worked for her, but because there was a line between their worlds, a class, a life, an age. People didn't cross lines like that. And even if they did, even if they wanted to try, love like this, hidden, forbidden, never ended cleanly. Especially for two women, especially for a woman like Ainsley, who had spent so long perfectioning the art of staying invisible. She placed the sweater aside, sighing deeply. The problem was, she didn't know where her desire ended and where her heart began. As much as she wanted to guard the space between them, Maria had already made a home in her thoughts, and that terrified her. She had known loneliness. She knew its quiet rituals. But this was something else. The ache of want mixed with guilt. The kind of longing that simmered under the skin, never spoken aloud. Maria, for her part, felt it too. God, she felt it. Every time she climbed the hill to Ainsley's house, her chest tightened, her breath shortened. It wasn't anxiety anymore. It was anticipation. She told herself it was just the job. She needed it. No distractions. She couldn't afford them. Rent was tight. Her cousin's kids needed school supplies, and her mother hadn't been well for years. She couldn't be foolish now. Not over a woman who belonged in a world of art and literature. Symphony tickets and Tuscan vacations. Ainsley was calm, intelligent, composed like a portrait carefully painted. And Maria didn't come from careful places. She came from noise, from gaps in her education, from laughter that sometimes covered sorrow. She scrubbed counters to feel useful. Held secrets so tightly they became a part of her spine. But when Ainsley looked at her that slow, thoughtful way that pressed into her deeper than hands ever could, Maria forgot all the reasons any of this was a bad idea. And maybe that was the real danger. It happened one ordinary Thursday. They were in the kitchen again, chopping vegetables for stew. Music played from an old speaker. Fleetwood Mac, and Maria sang along softly while peeling carrots. Her hair was tied up messily, strands falling over her cheek, her sleeves rolled up to the elbows. Ainsley tried not to look, not to linger on the familiar curve of her neck or the way her lips moved around lyrics. She failed. "You always sing when you're comfortable," Ainsley said suddenly. She hadn't meant to speak. God help her. It just fell out. Maria paused, blinking. "Do I?" Ainsley nodded, her eyes fixed on the cutting board. "You hum when you're worried, but you only sing when you feel safe." A silence stretched between them, thick and heavy. Maria set the peeler down slowly. "And do I sing a lot here?" Ainsley looked up. Their eyes met. Maria's breath hitched just slightly. "Yes," Ainsley whispered. Maria's fingers brushed against the edge of the counter. "Why does that mean something to me?" "I don't know," said Ainsley, "but it means something to me, too." There it was again. That quiet electricity, the kind that snapped just below the surface of what was allowed. It would have been smart to move, to laugh it off, to go back to cutting vegetables and talking about safe things like books or the weather. Instead, Maria stepped a little closer. "I think about you when I'm not here," she said, so softly it almost didn't exist. Ainsley's hand shook a little against the knife. "Don't." "Why not? You work for me." Ainsley said it too quickly, too sharply, and immediately regretted it. "I mean, people would talk." "No one sees me," Maria said. "Not really." "But you do." Ainsley stepped back, her heart pounding. "That's exactly the problem." "You mean because people would think it's wrong," Maria said, stepping forward. Just inches now. The air between them too thick to breathe. Ainsley clenched her jaw. Her heart was screaming yes, and her mouth just barely whispered, "Because maybe it is." Maria didn't say anything right away. Just watched her. Watched as Ainsley crumbled in real time. And then with a slowness born of patience and pain, she reached up and gently, almost reverently, touched Ainsley's cheek. "We could just pretend," she said. "Just for a second." Ainsley trembled. "If we pretend, I might not come back," she said. "If we cross this line, everything changes." Maria's eyes shone, something breaking open in them. "Everything already has." And before either of them could second-guess the moment, Maria leaned in and pressed her lips to Ainsley's. Not desperate, not ravenous, just soft, careful. like asking permission in a language that had no words. The kiss was brief, heart-shaking, terrifying. When Maria pulled back, Ainsley's eyes were still closed. She opened them slowly. "What are we doing?" Maria smiled, a sadness curling the edge of her mouth. "Making a mistake." Ainsley laughed softly, eyes glassy. "Then why? Does it feel like the most honest thing I've ever done?" Maria stepped back finally, her hands still warm from the kiss. "I should go. I know." Ainsley said but neither of them moved. "Will you come back?" Ainsley asked finally. Maria hesitated. "Do you want me to?" Ainsley didn't answer. Instead, she reached into the drawer and handed her the house key she'd been meaning to offer weeks ago. No words, just the sound of trust breaking quietly through the air. Maria took it with shaking hands, pressed it to her chest, and left, leaving Ainsley alone, unable to decide if she had just ruined her life or finally begun it. The days passed like quiet prayers. Nothing was said, but everything was felt. Maria came every Tuesday and Thursday, just as she always had, with a small smile and shaking hands. But now, unspoken things moved in the air around them like perfume, like smoke, like shadows slipping between light. Their conversations hadn't changed, and yet they had. Every word was gently wrapped in subtext. Every glance carried weight. They hadn't spoken about the kiss, not once, and that would have been fine if it hadn't meant so much. Ainsley found herself flinching at the sound of the doorbell. Her pulse shot up whenever she heard the rustle of Maria's presence, the key sliding softly in the lock, the familiar rhythm of footsteps on the wooden floor. It was terrifying, this feeling, knowing she had opened a door to something she couldn't close, but too afraid to walk fully through still. She watched, always watched. Maria brushing her hair out of her eyes as she arranged flowers in the hallway. Maria pausing mid-task to listen to the rain. Maria reading titles on Ainsley's bookshelf and smiling whenever she found one she'd already read. Ainsley felt like a woman coming undone, quietly, painfully, completely. "What's your favorite kind of sad?" Maria asked one day. Ainsley looked up from her laptop, jolted from her thoughts. "Sad isn't something I keep a collection of." Maria shrugged, scrubbing counters with that restless energy that always hid something deeper. "Some sadness feels lovely, like the kind you get when you finish a book and you miss the characters, or when it rains and you remember things you thought you forgot." Ainsley folded her hands. "Bittersweet, you mean?" Maria nodded. "Exactly." There was a pause. "My favorite kind of sad," Ainsley said slowly, "is hearing a voice you haven't heard in years in a dream, and then waking up." Maria stopped wiping. "That's a lonely one," she whispered. "They all are," Ainsley said. Her eyes briefly flicked up. "But some people live with that kind of loneliness every day, until they forget it has a name." Their eyes locked, and the silence grew heavy with something more than sadness, more than longing. A shared ache, one they couldn't give language to, but felt in their bones. Later, Maria found herself standing outside the house on her off day, not by accident. Not really. The streets of Greybrook were quiet that Sunday, the breeze soft and cool. Maria stood a long time at the edge of the path, staring up at the light in Ainsley's second-story window. She could hear faint music, the kind Ainsley liked, slow jazz or old soul, something nostalgic, the kind that sounded like the color blue. She didn't need to be there. She could have gone home. But what was home anymore? She wasn't sure. Maybe it was that kitchen with its lemon soap and hidden glances. Maybe it was the quiet cups of tea Ainsley brewed just for her, without asking how she liked it. Maybe it was someone finally seeing her without her having to perform first. Maria hugged her coat tighter and turned away. She didn't knock that day. She couldn't. If she did, things would change too fast, and everything in her life had always changed too fast. Meanwhile, Ainsley sat upstairs, the tea untouched beside her. She had seen Maria outside the window, had seen her hesitate on the path. The same way Ainsley had hesitated near the truth for weeks. She could have gone down, could have opened the door, but she didn't, because somehow the fear of ruining everything still overpowered the ache of wanting everything. Ainsley had known shame before, but this was different. This shame wasn't about identity. It was about power, position, age, responsibility. She was 34. Maria was barely in her 20s. Maria cleaned her house when life had denied her everything else. She was tender and kind and still healing from family scars that peeked out when her laugh got too quiet. How could Ainsley, who had built her life so carefully, dare to risk breaking someone else's? But she already had. That kiss, though brief, had shifted something between them forever. Sometimes she caught herself touching her lips when she remembered it, like she could summon it back. She hated herself for that. Yet she burned every second for more of it. Tuesday returned with heavy clouds pressing against the afternoon light. Maria didn't come. There was no knock, no key in the lock, no excuse. Ainsley waited. All morning, all day, she brewed tea, paced hallways, wrote and rewrote a stupid email she never sent. Hey Maria, hope everything's okay. Just checking in. Let me know if you need anything, or if the time no longer works for you. She never clicked send. How do you ask someone if they're avoiding you without confirming your worst fear? Maria finally returned 2 days later. She stepped into the house quieter than usual, her eyes unsure. I'm sorry, she said. I needed space. Ainsley, arms crossed, heartbeat loud in her ears, nodded too quickly. Of course. I understand. A lie. Maria put her bag down gently. The kiss, you don't have to explain. It scared me, Maria said anyway. Not because of you, but because I liked it. A lot. Ainsley's throat tightened. But I've never done anything like this. I've never had a want this big. It's all tangled up. It doesn't feel wrong, but it doesn't feel safe either. I don't want to be a secret, Ainsley. That name, the way Maria said it, like it mattered. You're not a secret, Ainsley said. You're something that makes me feel 17 and 70 all at once. They both laughed, but there was nothing funny in either of their eyes. I don't know how to do this right, Ainsley said. I want you here more than I should, but I also don't want to be someone you look back on years from now and regret. Maria stepped forward slowly, carefully. Then let's not rush. Let's not run away. We can't date, Maria. You work for me. This entire thing is a little broken. Maria offered. A lot. Maria bit her lip. Then, it's ours. It wasn't the perfect answer, but it was the most human one. Without another word, Maria reached over and took Ainsley's trembling hand, holding it like something she'd just learned how to do. And in that moment, in the space between doubt and desire, they weren't employer and maid. They were simply two girls who had waited too long to be seen. It was almost spring when everything came undone, and not in the tragic way that slow-motion heartbreak the poets love, but in the softer, more unbearable way. The kind of unraveling that happens when something too fragile is touched too tenderly, and still cracks anyway. Ainsley traced raindrops down the windowpane, watching them edge crooked lines across the glass. Somewhere in the kitchen, Maria was humming again, folding laundry with quiet rhythm. Their little cocoon had started to feel like home, like something that could last. But that was the problem, wasn't it? It couldn't. Not really. Because the real world was still out there waiting, watching. It started when someone in town recognized Maria while she was paying for groceries. "You working up at that old Evers place?" the cashier asked casually, bagging her bread. "My aunt's friend cleans there sometimes. You know Linda." Maria's fingers tightened around her wallet. "No, sorry, I don't know her." The woman shrugged. "Strange. I figured someone like Ainsley wouldn't need help. She doesn't really socialize." Maria smiled politely to hide how fast her heart was racing. "She's kind," she said. Placing the last item in her basket, the woman shot her a look, curious, a little amused. "Kind. Isn't she a bit? You know?" Cold. Maria didn't respond. Just paid, thanked her, and walked quickly out into the light drizzle. The weight of what they were, whatever they truly were, suddenly sat heavy on her skin. All this time, she told herself it was just theirs, secret but sacred, real even if reckless. But the town didn't see sacredness when it came in the form of a maid falling in love with her. Employer. Know this story, if known, would slither from mouths in ugly whispers. Predatory. Unbalanced. Shameful. Even if it wasn't any of those things, especially because it was in single quotes T. When Maria told Ainsley later that night. They sat together on the floor, backs against the wall. No lights, just candles flickering on the coffee table. Maria's voice was small, like she was afraid a louder tone might break everything around them. "I can't be a scandal," she said. "Not again." Ainsley stared into the flame. "What happened before?" Maria hesitated. Then, quietly, "I loved someone. A woman. When I was 19. She was older, too. My family didn't know. Her family found out." She paused. "There was yelling. Shame. I left university. I left everything." Ainsley turned to her, her chest rising slowly. A question on her lips she didn't have the courage to say. Maria answered it anyway. "But I never got to love her out loud. Not even for a minute." The silence that followed was so raw, they both felt it like a wound. "I don't need the whole town to know," Maria finally whispered. "But I need to be allowed to feel this in daylight. Even if only here. With you." Ainsley nodded. It wasn't a promise, but it was something close. For the next few weeks, they pretended the world didn't exist. They lived in a pocket of the universe made of lemon soap. Paperback novels, rain-glossed mornings, and mismatched coffee mugs. Maria stayed late more often. Sometimes she stayed over. Sometimes in the spare room. Sometimes in Ainsley's arms, where neither of them had the language to talk about what they were building. But they knew it. They breathed it. Fear still lived in both of them. But now it shared the room with joy. They kissed with laughter. They argued over dinner playfully. Maria rolled her eyes every time Ainsley corrected her grammar, and Ainsley melted whenever Maria sang without noticing. Love crept in like sunlight under a locked door, quiet, insistent, patient. Until one morning it entered loudly. Ainsley's sister, Grace, arrived from the city unannounced. She stood in the doorway, suitcase in hand, her eyes swinging from Maria barefoot, holding tea to Ainsley, who looked too shocked to string a single lie together. "Guess I missed something," Grace said. They sat in awkward silence an hour later, Maria having quietly disappeared upstairs. "So," Grace said, sipping her espresso. "How long?" Ainsley sighed. "It's not what you think. I think you're in love with your maid, and now you look like a deer in the headlights." "Well, maybe it is what you think." Ainsley sighed again and buried her face in her hands. "God, what am I doing? Grace, this isn't how it's supposed to happen." Grace's voice softened. "How is it supposed to happen, Ainsley looked up, eyes tired. "I was supposed to have a normal life. Marriage, kids, 2 vacations a year. Instead, I'm hiding love like it's something filthy. I don't even know if I'm saving us or ruining her. Grace was quiet a long moment. Then, does she make you feel loved? Ainsley's eyes filled. Yes. Then maybe stop punishing yourself and just let it happen. Ainsley stared at her. It's not that simple. It never is, Grace replied. But hiding from it doesn't make it easier. Just lonelier. The words stayed with her all day. That night, Maria stood at the door, ready to leave. She'd felt the shift, knew how complicated it was. She didn't want to make Ainsley choose. I get it if you need to keep this, Maria paused. Buried. Ainsley took a step closer. Will you stay? Maria looked at her, not answering right away. You keep asking me to stay, but you've never asked me to be with you. Not openly, not truly. Then let me try, Ainsley said. Please? With trembling hands, Maria dropped her bag. I love you, she said for the first time. It wasn't grand or cinematic. It was soft, brave, terrifying. And Ainsley smiled, wet and sincere. I love you too. They held each other as if the walls might collapse around them, as if the world outside didn't matter, because in this moment it didn't. 3 months later, it wasn't easy. Some people muttered. Some friends pulled away. Some neighbors looked along. But others, surprisingly, smiled. Quietly, kindly, like they understood. Maria stopped cleaning the house. Ainsley wouldn't let her anymore. They hired someone else. Now Maria spent her mornings writing by the window, barefoot, coffee steaming beside her. She was applying to go back to university. Ainsley, for the first time, stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop. She wrote, she edited, and she loved improper, forbidden, and completely real. Love like theirs wasn't supposed to exist in stories like this, but it did anyway. And in the slow, steady turning of days, they learned that sometimes the love that shouldn't exist is the one that finally sets you free. Asterisk if this story touched your heart. Don't forget to like the video to support stories that dare to be soft, honest, and real. Comment below. Let me know which moment between Ainsley and Maria hit you the hardest. Subscribe and turn on the bell for more deeply emotional, forbidden love stories told with soul. Some love stories aren't supposed to happen, but when they do, they change everything. Thank you for watching.